The following program has been rated GE by the Kenya Film Classification Board. It is therefore suitable for general family viewing.
Hello, viewer. Welcome to Chungu Jamii. My name is Betty. I am your host, and I am glad to be joined by a gentleman you have been longing to hear from. This entire month of April, we are going to be focusing on entertainment, African literature, Kenyan films, and artists, and even writers. You know, in Kenya, many of these things are not, we are not fans of so many of these things. But this time, having a lockdown in Nairobi specifically, we have lots of things that we wanted to identify with and even know that they're actually here with us. I would like at this time to invite my guest and have him introduce himself. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming me to this show. My name is Mark Pichachi, and I am here as an author, I think.
Welcome, Mark. Good to have you on the show at GBS TV. Who is Mark? And who makes Mark?
Mark? Who is Mark? That's a good question. Mark is an African. He just turned 37.
Wow.
Yes, I work mostly as a communication strategist, which basically means I think through communication challenges. I'm an author. I recently published sometime last year. My first novel. It's right here, Finding Eden. It's available everywhere: bookshops, Amazon, textbook center, wherever you go, you'll find it. It's a labor of love. I love language. I love the use of language to convey ideas. So that's who I am. That's what I'm about.
Interesting. I know that you don't just do writing, Mark. You do a number of things. But talking about writing today, you didn't tell us. I didn't feel like you exhausted in telling us exactly who Mark is or what makes Mark.
Let me tell you, you must always be careful when you're asked to toot your horn, and you make sure you toot it as little as possible.
Why?
Simply because Jesus said, when you're invited to a wedding, sit at the back, and so that when you get invited to the front, you're not embarrassed. So you always need to be very, very careful when you're going to introduce yourself, and you give the least, in mathematics, we used to call it the least common denominator. So that's what I gave. And I'm very happy with that least common denominator description of myself.
That's wisdom, because it's from the scriptures, A lot of us like to sit at the front for recognition, but if you find a well-renowned person just taking a back seat, it sends many questions to the people who sit at the front. I don't know what Jesus thought and saw that he mentioned and said such a thing in the scriptures anyway. But I know that Mark is a trader of many things. And today, Mark comes to us as an author. So what's the name of the book you have authored?
Well, the book is called Finding Eden. Here it is. It's basically the tale of African romance mixed in with how the typical African setup. And when I talk about African, it's because the book is set in different countries. It's not just set in Kenya. Follows the life of a young man through romance, through school, through marriage, through the challenges of all those seasons in life, and tries to give a very realistic picture of the mind and the goings on of a typical male going through the African experience of love, sexuality, marriage, and romance. And that's what it's about. That's what we push for.
We have known other people to write such books talking about romance and love, especially in the African setup. And I wonder what inspired you to do this, Mark.
Well, my biggest inspiration, weirdly enough, is the fact that I always wanted to write from as far back as I can remember. I remember one of my dreams in primary school was to write an article for the paper. So I remember, I think I was in class 4, I think it was, and I wrote an article, and I got the money for a stamp, and I put it on the envelope, and I sent it all the way to the Nation newspaper in Nairobi. And they never published my article. And if they did, I never knew, because it's not like we got the paper every day. But that's the next week or so I tried to see. So I always wanted to write, and I think that there is something about a written story that is greater than maybe a movie or a series. And they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I always say, isn't it quite an art to draw a picture with those 1,000 words? It's something that I love to do. So that's one. And then two, I think this is a story that I always wanted told. I didn't think it had been covered in the angles that it's been covered in the book. I think a lot of African romance novels have been a bit more tame. This is a bit more, forthright. It's a bit more punchy. I also wrote it and interlaced it with a lot of poetry, because I think poetry is part of love. As in, for me, poetry has always been that. So it is part anthology, part novel, and part just wanting to tell a story, and predominantly to begin a conversation about what's really happening, because typically African sexuality is something that is taboo. It is something we don't discuss. And that is true at many a rich man's funeral, because we don't discuss what we've done. The results of our romance and activities led by romance appear at funerals. And then suddenly we have to discuss, where was your father 20 years ago? It is these things that I wanted to challenge.
I wonder why love specifically. The novel that I know a lot of people have heard is about the Romeo and Juliet, the one that is so famous. Growing up, passing through high school, it was a book like a lot of people in this age of mine and yours probably went through. So that's all that we basically have heard about love in a book in the African setup. So why love? There's so many things that affect Africa. There's so many things that affect Kenya in particular. We have a lot of corruption issues that we need to be tackling without sleeping. There's so much. Our education, there's a lot that we need to talk about. Why love?
Well, that's a very good question, and I loved Shakespeare's writing. I think Shakespeare wrote very well. I loved Okot P. Bitek, his description of the African woman, comparing the whiteness of her teeth and eyes to milk. I loved all that growing up, and for me, this was inspiration. You're right. There were a lot of people who had that I was doing a book, assumed that I was going to write a book about politics, about communication, and things like that. But I did not want to remain in the mold for which I am mostly known, which is the political analysis and commentary. Because if I did that, then my next book after that would have to be in the same vein. So I wanted to do a book that would set me free creatively, a book that would allow me to show that I have more than just a penchant for politics. It allowed me to showcase more of what I can give. Now, that is one reason. Second reason is, I think love is a universal subject. A lot of the time we forget that every single culture across the world has the notion of love and the notion of wanting to belong. And so this is something that I thought was my offering to the world. And then also, I think we've downplayed the role of writing and art in general, not as a conduit of conveying complex ideas alone, but also of conveying thoughts and ideas that are more emotional, more salient than the issues of let's fight corruption, for example. Because one of the things I believe in that corruption is definitely a factor of how unloving we are as a people. I think anyone who steals money from the government typically doesn't love his neighbor. I don't think they have the expression of love in them. So I think there is, and I talk about this a lot. I think we have focused a lot about structurally engineering our society, and we never socially engineered our society. And that's discussing what does love mean. And this is critical because you look at the femicide that's going on, you look at the rape culture that is still prevalent in our country, and you realize we need to have a conversation about sexuality. We need to have a conversation about consent. We need to have a conversation about what it means to be healthy sexual beings, So I do not separate necessarily my writing of romance from my desire to change my society. I think it's connected. And throughout time, politics, art has been used to influence politics and culture. And I think this is one of those contributions.
I like what you say. And from your contribution, I can get to one of the questions that I was really going to ask you, because Kenyan and African are not wired to naturally, they do not have the culture to read. But when you bring up such content, talking about our sociality, this is not how we naturally are. We don't like to read. We know of growing up, a wife is supposed to be brought up in this way and carry on her roles in this way, and the man is this way, and that is all. So once you've got children and life is moving on, you're able to put food on the table, that is it. The lab subject never really comes up. It's never a topic of discussion as it is in the West. In the West, like a small thing will always be tied to love, would trigger love, and quickly a divorce or a marriage would happen out of very small things. In African setup, once you're married, and even the marriage ceremony is not a big issue. It's just an issue of age, and that is it. There's nothing like romance in talking about sexually alive. These are not things that we discuss in Africa and Kenya, basically. So how are we going to make Kenyans or Africans cultivate this culture of reading, since it is hardly in us?
Well, I know a few people who read, but you're right. By and large, the reading culture is not inculcated in us. In fact, many of us read for exams. In fact, ukiulizwa kama unasoma, you naturally respond, sina exam, or I have an exam, so I have to read. So, so it is that academic inclined towards study that actually needs to be fixed. But that actually, and your question is broad, and it's correctly broad for a number of reasons. Number one is our idea of living life is based on something called kufika, arrival, making it. And therefore, making it is a very interesting phenomenon, because it is an external expression. It is not internal. So, for example, if today you bought a Range Rover and you drove to your village, if you go to church, they'll make you a church elder and they'll put your name in the Harambe list, next to the chairman. It will be your name. Then whether you like it or not, you'll become an elder of your tribe. And so for us, actualization is material. It's material, which is why we have a lot of people who have wealth and no character. They're still, quote unquote, respected in society, because our idea of where we're going and what we value is prosperity at any cost. Now, the problem with that is, let's say I want to prosper by being a businessman, right? I have no reason, therefore, in my mind, to pick up a book and read a poem. It's why would I do that? I am more interested in going and doing my business and doing accounting, and then you'll meet me with a nyama choma and a tasker somewhere in the country. So because we do not invest and value so much the internal capacity of a human being, and be it more on the emotional side, are they patient, are they kind, are they caring, or more in the intellectual side, are they wise, are they well studied, are they vast in various issues. In fact, one of the biggest insults an African can give you is to tell you you are a know-it-all, as though it is a bad thing to spend time knowing things. And so it is this backdrop then that we then enter into the modern world. And now that brings up the question of marriage. The problem that we are having today in Africa is the age of our parents, where you got married and you never got divorced because it did not matter whether you're happy or not, is meeting with the Cinderella and I watched Kim and Kanye on TV expectation. And so you look at people on social media and they're so happy, and you're miserable in your marriage, and divorce is not yet so common, and you know it's a mixture of things. Now the reason we are in trouble is not that we should go back to the past, or nor is it that we should embrace the Kim and Kanye model of marriage. What actually needs to happen is spouses need to do a lot of personal development. If you can't be happy by yourself, no one is going to make you happy. If you can't achieve a climax by yourself, do not put that responsibility on someone else to make you climax. But you see, that comes from a background, because even when you got married, it was an external thing. You wanted to achieve the status of marriage, but you did not become a married person. In other words, you did not become what was required for that situation. So you will find some people who are unhappy because their spouse doesn't make them happy, but their spouse, there's nowhere on the contract that it says, I have to make you happy. And there's no part of the contract that says that all your climaxes are my responsibility. There needs to be, the person needs to grow, so that both of you, when you grow, you bring something into it. Some people have vampire spouses. There are financial vampire spouses who basically live off the other spouse. There's emotional vampire spouses who just swallow all your happiness. There's a lot of vampirism instead of partnership. You should be going somewhere so we can go together. I should not be the entirety of your destination. You know what I mean?
Very interesting. When I listen to you, I can see how many people are tied into what marriage did not become for them, but all they just desired. In your book, Finding Eden,
yes,
what is Eden?
Well, it's an interesting thing, because the reason I came up with this title is because in Matthew, Jesus is asked a question about divorce. And he says, in the beginning, it was not so. And that got me thinking, what was in the beginning? It is Eden that was in the beginning. And therefore, if we are to find marriage, we've got to find Eden. So that's how that came up. So Finding Eden is about Adam waking up and looking at a female for the first time, and then he has X-ray vision and can say, this is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. It is that understanding that I think we need to go back to. And I think it is something that we all innately search for. And of course, we've been sold various philosophies. I'll give you a few of the philosophies that we've been thrown, and then how we need to journey through to find the truth. We've been told there is a soulmate, right? So no one is going to make you happy until you find your soulmate. So there's this one person who absolutely blows your mind. We've been told about karma, which is a very funny thing. That if you date married people, and then your spouse will also date other people. We've been told that there's arranged marriages. You just sit around and your mom or dad brings you a spouse. So we've got very many marital theories: monogamy, polygamy. We've got triples now. We've got solopoly. It's a whole entourage of philosophies. But at the end of the day, you've got to find what is true to you, what makes you true to self, and true to self without injury to the person or persons you're with, because we decided that Africans were polygamous. I sat with an anthropologist who explained to me what really happened in Africa, and I realized, no, we were not. We had very no, it's true. I may not have time to go into it, but we were not polygamous in the sense that of how the fellows down in the American Midwest do polygamy. That's not what polygamy was. In fact, what a lot of Africans today practice as polygamy isn't. We had a much more colorful marital arrangement than we do now. And so it is not a competition between the Western ideal, if they still have those ideals anyway, or the African ideal. I think it's about the individual finding what is true for them and being able to express what is true to them to their significant other, and that's finding Eden. It is about honesty. It's about one of the most striking things in Eden. It says they were naked and unafraid. So it is about being true to yourself and being true to your significant persons, and then being able to live like that, and that's finding Eden.
Wow, I like the way the background of that book is based on scripture. And I don't say this because I'm Christian, but one of the things that I've been able to find on this planet in my few searches is that everything that was based on the Bible was actually a lot of wisdom. And everything else was just man-made. And when you got it right, you got it from God. You got it from scripture. I wonder what makes you get such Bible excerpts to do your book.
Well, I'll give you a bit of a hint. Number one, if someone reads the book as a religious text, they will get very lost, because the book explores very, let me say, naughty issues, right? But it is based on the Bible, so that confuses a lot of people. But I said something this morning that and this is the reason why I also wrote the book. If David lived in our time, then the book of Psalms would not exist in the Bible, because that fellow who loved Bathsheba is not good enough for the church today. You understand? And so my search for truth led me. I think I have studied nearly every religion I can study. I have taken time to study Hinduism, which I think is the most difficult one to understand. I've done Zoroastrianism, I have studied Islam, I have studied Sikhism, I've studied all of these things. And the reason why I love the Bible is because for me, it tells the most hopeful of stories. I'm not saying the others are bad. I am not the judge of other people's religions, but for me, this is a personal thing. I think I am in love with the idea of a God who's in love with me. That idea just blows my mind. I think I'm also in love with the idea that God pursues me as he would a lover. I love that. And I love the idea of then a God who paid the price for me, because God knows, based on how much I am a sinner, me and Paul have to have a debate as to who is the chief of all sinners, because I think I beat him on that. But so it is that idea that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That idea endears to me, and for me, a lot of, no, in fact, not a lot, almost everything I do, I try to do it based on the idea, and that idea for me is summarized in what Christ said. He said, "A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another." And love is not limited to romance. It's not limited to family. It's limited it's actually unlimited. You can apply love to every circumstance of life. So this book is a book that is meant, so if you're religious and you read it, it is meant to challenge you. It's meant to shake you and go like, well, you need to wake up, life is happening. And if you are not, it's a book that's written to make you understood, to know that there's someone who understands where you're coming from. But at the end of the day, it's also a book that's also meant to make you ask questions. Because one of the things that we've lost, especially in this era where we've got people storming the Capitol trying to install Trump as president and things like that, is we've lost the ability to question our ideas. So people say, I am anti-vaccines, and don't question me, don't ask me a question, or I believe the earth is flat, don't ask me a question. We've lost that. We've lost the ability to just be asked a question. You believe you're going to heaven, show me a scripture. You believe the earth was created in 7 days, show me logically how it was, because even in your Bible, it was not made in 7 days. Wait, can I show you it was made in 7 days? No, seriously, it wasn't. All right. So Genesis chapter 1, right? Chapter 1. First day, God creates light, right? Fourth day, what does God create? The sun and the moon. So if the sun was created on the fourth day, how did we count day 1? So the 7 days are not 7 physical days. You see, so that's a question.
I get it. Yes.
Yeah.
We must be that logical and reasonable.
Yes.
Mark, talking about your book again, being an author, what message are you passing to our society, especially our African setup? What message is your book passing?
There's a word I love in the Zulu language. It's called asikulume. What that talks about is let's talk. So the book is supposed to spark conversation, whether it's a conversation of disagreement or agreement. It is a conversation of taboo and what it is. It is supposed to spark that. And the reason why this is critical to me is I look at a lot of the issues we have today in society, especially between and of late we've been in a gender war, that other gender and that other gender, and you tell the men and you tell the women. I think it's quite ridiculous, because there is no woman who came without a man, and there's no man who came without a woman, and we do not, there's no, other than high school, there's no place I've ever gone where we're just men, So it's about conversation, all right? It's about men listening to women and women listening to men, and then the two being able to talk about their expectations, their desires, their fears, and what drives them up the wall. I'll give you a conversation that is uncomfortable. In this country, we've had a lot of female empowerment, which I support. I think women need all the support society can. But there is also a group of men saying that the boy child has been neglected, and we need to look at the needs of the boy child. Now, I do not see why these two groups argue, because if you have 2 children, if you take care of one, do you ignore the other? It's a very funny space we find ourselves in, where we assume these gender ideas are in conflict. They're not, and that's what it's about. Let's have a conversation, you know, and so it's written to provoke, it's written to entertain, but at the end of the day, it's supposed to leave you with questions, you know, about religion, about sex, about marriage, about celibacy, about losing virginity, and all of these things that you're just supposed to get to a point where you're asking questions.
Wow, wow. In our current generation and time, a lot of people prefer to watch movies, and there's even someone who has come up with the idea of watching books instead of reading because people purport not to have the time. How are you pushing to ensure that this works, that people get to read and get the message from the book?
Well, let me tell you something. I have spent a lot of time strategizing with different kinds of creators. So whether it's people who create visual content, TV content, or people who draw art, people who sculpt, musicians, DJs, and I want to juxtapose two countries, so Kenya and Tanzania, right? So Tanzania has its biggest export in music is Diamond, right? He's collaborated across the world, and he's making good money from what we can see, and I can confirm to you he is. Kenya does not have an equal. So we've got Sauti Sol, we've got Calligraph Jones, great artists in their own right, but we do not have the same thing. Now, why? Why? There are a number of reasons. Number one, Kenya does not typically celebrate its own, right? So if you're running in the Olympics and you're about to win, we'll be there clapping and what. But I assure you, most likely, if you don't do your deals right with Nike and whoever, you're going to die poor, right? That's most likely what's going to happen. But in Tanzania, across the pond, I can tell you that the smallest artist, you know, the guy who probably is known only in Buruburu, that's his thing. But he plays in all the small bars and he gets his 1,000, 2,000 shillings every day and he's able to live. And there's a bigger artist in Nairobi, there's another bigger artist in Morogoro, or wherever it is. And they have all these ladders to which your skill set and your hard work can make you rise through all the way to maybe the top. In Kenya, you only have the top DJs making money, top musicians making money, and everybody else is struggling. Now, that brings me to answering your question. We have a distribution and appreciation problem in this country. Right? So distribution, I'm talking about if someone has music, how do we make sure it's played in every station? We do not have a concrete system for that. If you have a piece of art, you know, you've drawn something that's so beautiful, you've seen many artists holding up their pictures so that Uhuru or Raila can see it and pick it from them and give them 20,000 mob, because we have some galleries, but the guy on the street and the gallery are like, you know, worlds apart. Same thing for writing books. You write a book, and then the author will, the publisher will tell you, as an author, we'll give you 20%, we will keep 80%. It's totally unacceptable, and therefore, if you don't have the money to self-publish, you will write a book to subject yourself to poverty, because it is a lot of work. So we have a distribution problem between the publisher and the author. There's that. And then, of course, now there's marketing, right? The number of people who are willing to have a TV show like you are doing right now to discuss a book are like, you know, so the publicity, the marketing of the book. You see, Barack Obama, he launches his book as big as he is. He's got millions of followers on Facebook, but he'll still go on Trevor Noah's show and talk about his book. He'll go to Oprah's show. He will go wherever there's an opportunity to market the book, because that's also what is needed. You need to be able to market it. Yeah, but also there's the problem of there's an intellectual disdain in this country. You are more likely to get an interview for being one of Eric Omondi's wives than you are for writing a book. You know. So
one of the wives.
Yes, yes. If you're one of the wise men, you got arrested by the cops the next day. Oh my God, how did it feel? You got arrested. What were you doing? I can imagine I was talking, and then the cops just showed up out of nowhere, and then I was arrested. And that sounds. And
True, true, true. I agree.
so we have
Priority.
yes, so our our intelligentsia is domiciled by the. If you look at any analysis, most of the time it is politics, 90%. Then we've got 5-6% on foreign policy and business. You know, that's where we apply our brains, but we rarely do give space to the intellectuals of our country to actually mold ideas beyond politics. And so those are the problems. And then now you've got the poor reading culture as well. And then, oh wait, there's one more. There's the jealousy we have for other people making it. You know, it's interesting because I have a relative, and I hope he watches this or he's told this. But I hear that every time he sees me on TV, he gets so mad, and he switches off his TV because he thinks I don't deserve to be on TV, and maybe I don't. You know, I could be lucky. But the point is, we have an innate jealousy that we don't support our friends, right? So your friend opens a butchery, you don't buy nyama from him. Your friend starts a garage, you take your cars there. So all that is what is now ailing us as a society. If you go to Tanzania, for example, if a relative has a show, my goodness, you will find even his grandmother there, you know, listening to support one of their own. In fact, one of the stories I was told, and I don't know whether it is true, so it could be an apocryphal story, is how in Kigoma, where Diamond grew up, he didn't have money to do, he was selected. So there's this thing called Fiesta. They go around Tanzania picking different artists. And so he was selected from Kigoma, and he didn't have money for uniforms and for dancers. And his community got together, and they put the money together to send him to Dar es Salaam to do this big show. And that's how he got his break. Now, I don't know whether it's true or not, but the premise of that is still the same. In Kenya, if you died, you will get more money donated for you than you would donated to start a business. That's just all I'm saying.
Mark, how do we solve all these problems? Because they're really dragging us behind. And you know, people give up. When such things are done to you, you are like, I mean, what is the point?
Well, it's difficult. I can tell you for sure. When I try to speak to publishers, and they're giving me that 80%, you know, it was horrible, and that's why it's self-published. There's no publisher there. I have to publish it myself. But how do we solve it? So number one, we've got to regulate the industry. We've got to pass a bill that says, okay, so this is a piece of creative writing. As a newspaper, if you're going to run someone's article, you need to pay them, compensate them a certain amount. If you are a publisher and you're going to publish a book, you're going to keep 40%, or take 60%, give 40% to the writer. So we need to legislate, yes, around this, because publishers do have the networks. They have got access to all the booksellers. They've got access to all the venues that sell books, and so you need to do that. You need to have an agreement. Secondly, what needs to happen is we need to inculcate a culture of pride in ourselves. I think one of the most this is funny. One of the most painful things I saw once, I was in a bookshop and my book was there, and Barack Obama's book was there, and Barack Obama's book was way more expensive than mine. And I was there, I was talking to the manager of the shop. And then this guy came, said hi to me, like, hi, Chachi, you know, I like what you do. And then, you know, I told him, oh, that's my book. and he said, yeah, cool, you know, and then he picked up Barack Obama's book and left. So he didn't even read the back, like he didn't give me a chance, you know, like should have at least judged it by the cover. But the ideology of Ubuntu, you know, support your own, as in, even if you're not gonna read it, you're gonna put it in your house. You put breakfast on someone's table, and then that's good enough. So again, Ubuntu, that's the other thing. But three, and I think we don't do this nearly enough as a country, we need to have cultural festivities, right? So where we've got groupings of artists, writers, poets, and all of these people who come, and there's a great carnival, probably Nairobi or Mombasa, and you showcase your book, and there's lots of sales. People are coming in there looking to invest in the next new artist. There's concerts, there's all of these things, so that we create a bonanza for which people to appreciate. And once we start creating that culture, then people will participate more. You know, the problem we have as a country is even our concert culture is quite wanting. You know, if you go to a concert in Dar es Salaam and you come back here, you realize a big difference. And I'm using Tanzania because it's closest. It's the same in Ghana and other
places. I was going to ask you why Tanzania. You know, many times people think Kenya is much better than Tanzania. But if you look closely, they're doing much better in many things than we are.
Yeah, in terms of art, Tanzania is doing pretty well. The economy, it's less than half of Kenya economically, but there are things they do well. They have a more gelled society. You can't find a Tanzanian terrorist, no matter how poor they are, because they love each other. You know, as in, it's the most amazing thing, because you'll find during Eid al-Fitr, you know, there's Christians celebrate it as though it's their holiday, and they go into each other's homes. And Christmas, it's the same thing. We don't have the same thing in Kenya. So, but I use Tanzania because it's our closest neighbor. I can give you examples of Ethiopia, but they sing in Amharic, so then you'll be lost. Can give you Ghana, but they're singing Twi, so which is again lost. But you can see what I mean in all these examples that I was giving you. But it's the same thing. But we need to come together as a society, support our own artists, you know, and even join hands in critiquing, you know, read someone's book and then have a debate and say it wasn't well written, it was well written, someone's song, it was a good song. We need to do more of that.
Yeah. Mark, how do we get the government to do this, to support? Because usually we have a lot of funding for youth, funding for this, and much as youth could have the desire and would even have the passion and the gifting, they don't venture into it because they don't have the support. You know, you could be talking from someone who has made it and has a few shillings to put up and even publish it on your own. But talk to the writer who is just aspiring and want to come up with something and put down what they have in paper.
Well, number one, what can we do to push the government? I am personally putting together a bill to support artists, because I think this is something important, because our constitution does allow us to put a private member's bill into parliament. It might not go anywhere, but it's a start, because that's what you need to do. So I'm still doing the research. I'm putting together the thoughts, because you want to present something that is solid. So that's one. Number two, how do we get government to act? We have conversations like this. If a lot more of our artists would stop going to TV shows to discuss the latest rumors and who they're dating and things like that, and discuss the issues that affect their industry more seriously, they'd be headed somewhere. In fact, a lot of them, I saw that the hashtag that the president needs to open up the country. No, what needs to happen ideally is you are a musician. You've given us a brilliant song. You should be able to survive off the royalties of your song. You know, that's ideally what should happen. But Kenyan musicians are tied to concerts. No concerts, no money. And I understand that, but that's what we need to change. We need to change that. Everyone who's hearing your music should be 2 shillings, 3 shillings, 4 shillings coming your way. That's the holy grail. That's what they should push for. But they're used to status quo. And again, I think we lost something from the 90s, where we had activism towards actually thought out ideas, like multi-party was one of those things. I think now we are just more of a reactionary society, live and let die society, which is biting us thoroughly.
I like the way they have given them a good advice. Instead of appearing on TV shows and just talking about their, their love lives and their datings, they should be talking more on what is affecting them. I agree with you. Those who are coming up, they want to write. Would you tell them, please go ahead?
Yes, I will, and I'll give them a few pieces of advice. Number one, don't do what I did. Don't do a physical copy and things like that. This is a waste of good money. Write your book. Get someone to edit it. You can't. I realized the hard way, you can't edit your own book, because you start editing it and you start rewriting the story, and then you will never finish. Okay, so get an editor, get a proofreader to read your book for you, right? Second, use Amazon. Use an online publishing firm, because what happens is then the number of books that you will have to print is limited only by the number of people you market to, right? So put it online. Let people who want to read it, download it, read it on their phones, read it wherever. If you happen to now start getting demand for physical copies, the good thing is with Amazon is they can publish it and deliver it to the person wherever they are in the world. So don't do a physical print, do your book online, and then market like crazy. You need to push it hard. I personally have not pushed hard enough, because I've got many things on my table, but I can tell you, push it, and this is the thing that I think, if you study, okay, let me digress a little bit. If you study musicians, actors in the United States, what they do once a movie comes out, or they have an album out, or they have a single out, is they go out there and they market, right? And they are on every TV show, and they're everywhere talking about their book, and trying to get publicity around it. It's not something we do, because again, access to media in this country is a bit hard. But you go to market. Thankfully, there's social media, right? So if you price your book right, and it's not cost you a lot of money, and you get 200 people to download it off of Amazon, and you're making 400 shillings per book, that's 80,000. It's not bad money. And you can do that, The other advice I would give you is write a simple book. Write a people's book. Write a book that people can read quickly. Don't write 700, 800 pages. You lose people. Don't use too complex jargon. Use relatable language. Thinking about, and always think about who's gonna read my book. It's something else I didn't do. I wrote a book for me in my mind, but looking back, I should have written a book for a certain population that I knew. Where am I going to meet them? Where are we going to discuss this thing, and things like that.
Yeah. Wow. Writing being that difficult, and support not also being easy to come by, would you also advise that if you're a writer, then you need to get a side hustle to keep you?
Well, let me tell you, if you're an artist of any kind in this country, please do get a side hustle. Yes. It is critical, and this is not just true for Kenya. It's true for a lot of people. If you look at the stories of many a Hollywood actor, when you're starting out, you do need to supplement your income. A lot of the great writers did something else as they were writing, and then again, also remember that writing is a skill that you need to practice. So do not assume that your first piece of writing, whether you're writing for the paper or you're writing for whatever, don't assume that your first piece of writing is going to be it. You got to hone your skill, hone your audience, and practice until you get it right. If you don't do that, then you're going to miss out. So while you're practicing, just the same way, if you're a footballer before you are signed on by Manchester United, you better be working at McDonald's or wherever to make a living before the big signing comes. And then this is Africa. It might not come, it may come, but the most important thing is, as you're writing, think about your business model and grow it pole pole.
Wow. We're out of time, Mark. That has really been awesome. I'm just wondering, or if you write a book and it doesn't sell or you don't get money from it as you had anticipated, then do you have to write another or wait until you have sold this? Because now people know you're not an interesting writer. So.
Here's the thing. The thing about art and writing is it's tricky. There are people who are lucky enough that their art is appreciated while they are alive and they make a lot of money from it. There are people who wrote books and then they died and then everyone is like, oh, this is a good book, right? And so the best advice that I can give you, and this is not just about writing a book, it's also about singing, whatever. Number one, before you write your book, don't go and write 800 pages of a novel and then find out you can't write to save your life. Write a page, get a focus group, get 30 people who you think are independent minded to tell you whether you're a good writer or not. And so that you can get that feedback and know. And then try different things. Write a short story, find out, do they like it? Try out different styles, find your own voice, find out where you are. Then when you find your rhythm, find how when you write people like it or you like it, how you write, find your rhythm. Using short stories, short pieces, write 4 or 5 paragraphs, right? Give it to people, let them give you feedback. Do not go and write 800 pages of a book only for us to tell you, you can't write to save your life. So there is a method to the madness.
Wow. Thank you, Mark. I hope that everyone who is aspiring to write has taken notes out of this, and they're really going to do a good job even during this lockdown. And the rest are going to be reading that book. I love the love story. I hope to find it and find Eden. I guess when people find Eden, we will not have any more separations and divorce. Would you give us your parting shot before we end?
One of the things that is most critical in life is not finding what is out there, but it's finding self. And after you find self, to live a life that is true to self is a gift that not even the gods can force on you. It's a gift that you've got to give yourself. Find yourself and be true to self.
Wow. Find yourself. I hope you got it, guys. Thank you so much for watching Chungu cha Jamii. My name is Betty. I have been your host. See you next time.